Agamben's work Creation and Anarchy explores the relationship between creation, art, and politics. It proposes that Western civilization has misinterpreted the concept of creation by connecting it with an external act of production. Agamben dissects how art, theology, and economy have converged under the logic of capitalism. It results in what he calls the anarchic condition of modernity, an existence without a governing principle or final purpose. Agamben begins the book by re examining the theological concept of creation. In traditional Christian thought, creation is understood as an act of divine will that brings the world into being from nothing, creation ex nihilo. Agamben challenges this idea by questioning the very connection between creation and action. Modernity inherited from theology the assumption that all being must be the product of a determinate act or function. This assumption has trapped Western thought in an operative paradigm, a worldview that privileges doing, making, and producing as the foundations of meaning. Creation, instead of being a manifestation of pure potentiality, has been reduced to a function or result of an external cause. This operative logic underlies both art and politics. In art, the concept of the work, opus, implies a completed product of creative labor. But Agamben seeks to liberate art from the dominance of production, proposing instead an idea of creation as a non operative activity, an act without end or goal. Drawing on Aristotle's distinction between poiesis, making, and praxis, doing, he emphasizes how Western aesthetics has always subordinated art to its outcomes. True artistic creation resists this reduction. It is not the making of an object, but the revelation of a potentiality, the suspension between act and inaction. The artist, in this sense, is not a producer, but a witness to the event of creation as pure possibility. Agamben also traces this theological and aesthetic structure into the modern religion of capitalism, an idea originally proposed by Walter Benjamin. Capitalism is not merely an economic system but a theological one, a religion without redemption in which work, production, and consumption become sacred rituals. The capitalist subject worships activity itself, endlessly producing and consuming to sustain an economy that can never rest. Agamben describes this as the sacralization of operation. Every act becomes an obligation, and the cessation of work is treated as sin or failure. The anarchy of creation, once belonging to divine mystery, has now become the chaotic motor of global capitalism. In this religion of work, Agamben sees a profound crisis of human potentiality. Modern individuals have forgotten how to dwell in inoperativity, how to exist without function. The contemporary obsession with productivity, efficiency, and performance leaves no space for contemplation or play. Yet, for Agamben, inoperativity is not mere passivity, it is the highest expression of freedom. To be inoperative is to suspend the compulsion to act, to open space for thought and imagination. He reinterprets the biblical idea of the Sabbath as an image of this liberated state, creation's rest after completion, where work ceases and existence itself becomes a form of joy. The book's central paradox, creation and anarchy, thus names a tension within Western metaphysics. Creation implies an ordered act of bringing forth. Anarchy denotes the absence of principle or rule. Genuine creation can occur only when the operative principle collapses, when art and life are freed from the tyranny of productivity. In this way, anarchy is not chaos, but the revelation of being without foundation, the recognition that life does not require justification through work or purpose. This insight connects to his broader philosophical project, which often revolves around exposing how Western thought continually seeks to ground itself in external authorities, law, power, God, and how these foundations can be rendered inoperative. Agamben also reflects on the political dimension of this insight. If capitalism represents the total mobilization of human activity, then resistance cannot take the form of more action or production. It must emerge from the suspension of work, from reclaiming the capacity to not act. Political liberation is inseparable from the rediscovery of inoperativity, a condition in which life becomes its own form of creation. Art serves as a model for politics, not as a means to an end, but as an expression of potentiality that refuses instrumentalization. In his concluding reflections, Agamben turns to figures like Aristotle, Heidegger, Benjamin, and Kant, putting together philosophical, theological, and aesthetic traditions to show that the essence of art, and indeed of human existence, lies in its capacity to render creation inoperative. What remains after the end of work and the collapse of divine authority is not nihilism, but a new possibility, an anarchy of creation where life itself is the artwork and being is freed from the logic of production.